we were in negotiations.
Investing in real estate, they're winning, they're making money.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Real Estate Educators Podcast, where we provide the education you can build on. I am your host, Kevin Amolsch. This podcast has been a ton of fun because we're helping real estate investors with their success and real estate educators. So if you're a content creator or an investor, this is the podcast for you. I know you're going to enjoy this episode. I have a good friend with me today. And after you listen in and enjoy it, please give me a 5-star review and share it with a friend. So, Kim, you've been in this industry for a long time.
For a very
since
long time.
1998. And you've been doing, you've been ranked number one mortgage originator for years and years. I think you said like since 2016 or something like that.
Well, goodness, not necessarily number one. That would be incredible.
In 1%. I'm sorry.
Top 1%. Yeah.
That feels like number one to me.
Well, it's certainly a nice compliment. But yeah, since 2014 or 15, I started originating in 14. And since 2015, I've been in the top 1% in the nation, which has been
That's amazing.
Highly to people in your group and my team and all my awesome clients.
And you could hear it with the accent there. You're from Minnesota, so you're one of our Minnesota friends. But take me back, Kim, because I've known you for many, many years now, but I don't really know you, I don't think. So I want to get to know you a little bit better, and then let's see what we could do to help real estate investors and real estate educators. So take me back. How did you even get started in real estate?
Oh, gosh. Well, I thought that it was normal when I was a kid to be fascinated by real estate. So my parents got the newspaper. I was always looking at the real estate ads in newspaper. I was fascinated by new homes. I was always drawing new homes. I wanted to be an architect. I wanted to be a realtor, all these things. I kind of thought everybody felt that way until I realized probably about 10 years ago that they didn't. So I knew I wanted to be in real estate. And when I graduated from college in 98, I looked in the newspaper for a job, and there was this little ad from Mortgage Loan Processor for $9 an hour. So I was like, that looks like the right job for me. And it really was a great first step into mortgage. I worked for a little mom and pop shop out of Adams Heights, Minnesota, and they were incredibly eclectic people, which made it really fun. But I also just learned so much from them. So from there, I grew my work. I moved to Chicago for 10 years. I became an accidental landlord when I moved back. I continued to work in operational type of roles, sales assisting type of roles until 2013 when I decided to start working with real estate investors myself. The loan officer I had been working for prior to that for about 7 years was a nationwide loan officer, and he wrote a blog called The Mortgage Reports. And he was always kind of giving daily updates as to what was going on in the mortgage world. But what was interesting is the people that would find us were people that were desperate, right? They were not looking for your cookie cutter loans. And my job when those people would reach out to us was to find a loan for them. And it turned out that probably 80% of these people were real estate investors, and they could not find financing for what they were trying to do. So I became really highly educated on that whole part of our guideline book that was about investing. And when I decided to become an originator, I knew that was the market that I wanted to serve because I knew there was so much trouble finding loan officers that were educated in that piece. So that's how I became involved in our investor community here in the Twin Cities. It was incredible. My first networking event that I went to here in the Twin Cities, I thought was going to be a group of about 10, 15 people. And I walked into a Minria room full of 300. I was like, wow, there are 300 people in here that want to buy a house. And I am the only mortgage person. This is fantastic. So it was
And that was 2013 when you went to that into
I think
that
that
room?
was 14. And that was 14. Yep. So that was my first introduction into the real estate community here in the Twin Cities. And they are awesome people and always innovating and so excited to help each other and just really be what a community is, right? So it's been a lot of fun getting to know everyone.
Did you meet Sean in that room that day?
I did. So Sean was there and he called me the next day and he's like, I've been looking everywhere for you. He's like, I can't get anybody to do these loans for us. Do you think you? And when he told me what you guys were doing, I was like, well, I don't know if that's the kind of people I'm looking to work with. First, I thought he was my competition. And then I was like, I don't know what you guys are doing. Then I got to understand what you were doing. And I was like, oh my God, this is incredible. So not only did I get to connect with Sean and start to work with a lot of your clients, but Sean and I spent years and years educating people about what an amazing opportunity this is. And I still to this day just really feel it is such an incredible opportunity for these people to get into properties and build a portfolio. Because how many phone calls was I having before that where I was saying, oh, you don't have 25% down? Sorry, right? There's nothing I can do for you. So it's such a nice thing that I can present to people who are willing to roll their sleeves up a little bit and work.
Yeah, and I definitely want to dig into that. The strategy that you and Sean implement out in the Twin Cities and the classes you do and all of that. But I don't want to lose track of the very first investment property in Chicago.
Oh, God.
So you said by default. So what happened?
So I, being in the mortgage industry, was completely unable to predict the crash of 2008. So in 2005, I think it was, a little fuzzy, my husband at the time and I purchased a little townhouse in Chicago, in the oldest area of Chicago called Old Town. It's right down the street from like the Second City studios and all these fun, cute little places that have been there forever. Well, what you find when you buy a little old townhouse in the oldest part of the city with a basement is all of the sewer systems that have been there for 1,000 years don't keep up with those things and you get flooding in your basement. That was fun. We were told though that was like the year of the 100-year floods and it would never happen again. So time passed. We lived there for probably about 4 years. And then when my daughter was about 1, the market crashed. And we suddenly had a $400,000 loan on a townhouse that was worth like $230,000, $240,000, and a little 1-year-old. So we decided at the time we were going to move halfway back to Minnesota, where we were both from, and rent out our townhome. We rented out to these lovely attorneys who were the only people at the time that could actually afford to live in this townhouse because the rest of us were going broke. And they were wonderful, except for the fact that they had to then deal with this surprise flooding that kept happening over and over again. So I would lay in bed at night in Minnesota and watch the weather reports and watch the cloud moving across Wisconsin to Chicago. And I'm like, no, they're going to call. And sure enough, and we would have to have it dried. And it was like a $1,200 process every time it flooded. So in the end, we ended up short selling that townhouse for about $260,000. And it was a painful first experience.
Oh, that's terrible. Yeah. I lived in a house. So I did a contract for deed on a property. This was maybe 2010 or 11. So I was just getting into my recovery from the crash. Mm-hmm. And it too had the basement flooding issue. And it's just so complicated because it's hard to diagnose. Like, where is the water coming from?
Yes.
Is it a simple sump pump that will fix this? Or is it coming in the foundation walls? So right. I feel your pain.
We found out, so we were in like a courtyard type of situation. And there was a big drain in the center of the courtyard, but for some reason there was a little drain closer to our unit. And then we heard that the water tended to come towards our unit, so they put another drain closer to ours, which was great until the guys that did the basement in our unit dumped all of their concrete down our drain, plugging up.
They all do that. Why do they do that?
Why? We know what happens when this stuff is hard. So it was quite a learning experience. But we did it again. We bought a townhouse in Minnesota, lived there for about 4 or 5 years, moved out to the country and rented that townhouse, and actually had quite a bit of success with that. That was a positive experience.
Do you still have it?
For us? No.
So you kept it as a rental for a little while, and then you just got to a point where it's like time to sell.
We just thought the market's good. Let's sell it. Our tenants were moving out. We were living about 30 minutes away from it. So we just thought, yeah, let's sell it.
Okay.
And then several years later, we picked up 2 single family homes in Minneapolis to Airbnb. One of them I ended up selling to one of my teammates on my team, and the other my ex-husband still owns, and I think he runs it as a midterm rental.
Okay. So I guess the divorce, you each got one and you sold yours.
Yeah.
Do you have any rentals now?
I don't. But I'm starting to think about my daughter's going to be going to college in a year and a half. So depending on where she decides to go, if she I won't be buying any rental property, but if she goes to Iowa, there's a decent chance I'll look into buying something so that she can live there, at least for, I think she has to spend her freshman year on campus, but perhaps after that we'll find
a tenant you could trust.
Well,
or maybe not.
Pretty sure. Pretty sure. She's a good kid.
That's great. Okay, so now let's fast forward. You met Sean. You're at the MNREA meeting. MNREA is an amazing networking room for those of you in Minneapolis. We have Mike on every quarter to go through. We do like this market pulse, Kim, where he comes on and him and I just talk about what's going on in the economy. And then he gets into some of the details, what's going on in your local economy. So be sure to check those out. So the Market Pulse podcast once a quarter. So you met Sean, and Sean's like, I've been looking for you. And I know the reason for this, Kim. It's because of that refinance has been difficult because of a title seasoning issue. So let's get into that. Talk to me about the strategy that you and Sean talk about and why investors should be considering the strategy.
Yeah. So, what Sean explained to me, what you do is you provide money to people to buy and rehab properties that aren't financeable conventionally, right? Only to investors, which is great. But he was having trouble at the time finding a takeout lender, someone who could come in after the client was done with the rehab and convert that loan into a long-term loan so they could hold it as a rental. And I think that had just started to become a little bit more common. A lot of people were flipping. So it wasn't quite as important as it was becoming at the time I met Sean. People were saying, hey, either I can't get as much for this as I originally thought, or why don't I just hang on to this? Rents are so high in our market, I can cash flow immediately and build up a portfolio of rentals. So that was such a cool concept to me, and the way that Sean could present it to show the return on investment. I mean, these people would come into our little seminars and their eyes would just be huge, right?
It's pretty amazing, really.
It is really amazing. So here we had these clients who were incredibly successful building rental portfolios. We have one mutual client. I think he and his wife did 17 or 18 properties with us, and very little money out of pocket, if any. He had 401k and all the stuff, right? He was a highly, highly qualified client, but the key was he was turning these properties and not putting any of his own money into it. And it was just such a cool thing to see. And my company that I was with at the time was really supportive of it. It's a little bit more complex. We've got to have a little bit more strategy-minded underwriters, and it just really worked out well to be able to support you guys in that endeavor, because I know not every loan officer, not every underwriter has that mindset towards those types
Yeah,
of
that's right.
properties, towards creating that type of portfolio.
So the idea, this is like the BRRRR strategy is what we're talking about here.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
were doing this far before it was coined BRRRR, but it makes sense because it's buy, rehab, rent, refinance, repeat. Did I get that right?
Well, I
How
always
many
think
R's
the
are
last
there?
couple could be mixed around a little bit, but it still works.
Okay. Basically, it's buy, rehab it, rent it out, and then refinance. So that's
Yeah.
really the concept here. And the reason that works so well is because if you use hard money or private money like Pine Financial, then you come in with a high leverage out of the gate.
Yep.
So you're not trying to pull your money back out later. You're already leveraged where you want to be. The reason that's attractive, and tell me if I'm wrong here, Kim, is because when you do your refinance, now we're looking at a rate and term refinance instead of a cash out refinance. So two benefits there. One, there is no title seasoning requirement. And that's
Correct.
this like myth that you hear out there. You have to own the property for a year before you could refinance it, right? So I wanted to get into that. And then two, it's lower pricing. So you should get lower interest rates on a rate and term over a cash out. And we're talking
That's
about
correct.
putting in a 30-year fixed rate loan on a property you plan to hold on forever. You want the lowest possible rate you can get, I would assume. So those are two of the benefits of coming in with the private money out of the gate and leveraging up. And then you're like zero money out of pocket, or maybe a little bit of money out of pocket, depending on how the numbers shake. And then you do the refinance, get them into their loan, and then they just keep it. And that's a way to build the portfolio.
Yep.
Did I get that right?
You sure did.
All right, let's talk about that title seasoning, because every class I teach, I still teach classes. I really enjoy that. Almost every single one, someone says, no, you can't do that. You can't. You have to own the property for a year. So talk to me about that.
Well, I think that's the magic behind what you have figured out, is the way that you build in the rehab costs into the loan. Because so many lenders in your position will say, well, we'll finance the purchase and the rehab, but we want you to put 10% down. We want you to put 15% down of the total cost of the purchase plus the rehab. Okay, well, that's fine. But then when it's time to refinance, you don't get that 10 or 15% back. You have to wait a year if you want to try to get that back. So you've really created a model that allows the client to extract essentially as much out of that property as they're going to be able to in as short of a time as possible. By creating that instant equity, right? They're walking into the property with 30% equity. I'm coming in, rolling in their closing costs, rolling in some escrow, sometimes giving them a small, they can get like 2,000 cash back without tripping the cash out flag. And here they are into a property with quite often no money out of pocket. So it sounds gimmicky, but it's real. And to see those case studies that Sean will share with people. Actually, I was just speaking to some investors a couple of weeks ago, and I shared one of his case studies. And it's the power of the leveraging is so key for people to understand. People that get hung up on, oh my gosh, the rate's so high. Oh my gosh, the fees are so expensive. It doesn't matter when you're using this money for a short period of time and you're leveraging it into 30% equity on a property.
This episode is brought to you by Pine Financial Group. Pine Financial is a private lender specializing in short-term rehab lending to real estate investors. Got a property that needs some love? We can help. We are able to offer funding solutions because we raise private money from individual investors. With more than 15 years of experience, Pine offers passive investors an alternative that provides stability, consistency, and security to your portfolio. If you like real estate but want to avoid the ups and downs and effort, a Pine mortgage fund could be a perfect fit for you. Accredited investors will experience an 8% preferred return and profit sharing. Diversify your portfolio out of Wall Street and into Main Street with a Pine Financial Group mortgage fund. Get more information at pinefinancialgroup.com. That's pinefinancialgroup.com.
Yeah. Right.
I mean, it's a return on your investment, right? And we like the cash on cash. The cash on cash return more than a return on investment, because if you think about a return on your investment, I'm not trying to get too high level here and lose anybody, but when you look at a true ROI, you got to account for the appreciation of the property and maybe your tenant paying off your mortgage for you every month. You get a little bit of principal reduction, right? So all of that goes into your total return, but that's not cash in your pocket. So what we really like to look at is the cash on cash return. And I don't know the case studies that you're talking about here, but I'm guessing you're probably north of 30% cash on cash.
Mm-hmm.
So is it
Absolutely.
worth paying a little bit more in two closings of a hard money loan and your loan? Is it worth paying a little bit more to get a 35% cash on cash?
Right. Right.
That's
In order to
that's the math.
recuperate all of your cash after 1 year, and then now you're just making whatever the cash.
Yeah, and then the only money sometimes out of your pocket is the payments on the hard money loan until you get that refinance done. So how
Mhm.
fast can I get a refinance done with you?
Well, it depends, on we had a really, really savvy client that it was actually a realtor and a contractor and understood your program really well, and he turned one around in 45 days once.
So
Not super
from
common.
buy the property to your loan, 45 days total.
Yep.
Dude, that's insane.
Yeah.
You might not have even made one payment on the hard money loan.
Yeah, maybe he made one to you guys, I'm not sure. So that's an anomaly somewhat, but we've seen people turn them around quickly, especially those that are really diligent about the scope of work process and making sure they've got all of their bases covered, are familiar with what it takes to rehab a property. Those tend to be the greatest success stories, I would say.
Yeah, this is awesome. I really think the listeners should look into this strategy. So I know we're going to go, I got more to talk about, but while we're talking about the BRRRR strategy and using you for that refinance, how do we get a hold of you?
Oh, goodness. Well, it's easiest to catch me on my email, kim@kptmortgage.com. And from there, we'll plan a time to connect on a Zoom call or chat on a phone call and talk through how I can help.
Okay. And you pretty much only work with investors. I know you could do it all, but your focus is real estate investors.
Yeah, I've been spreading my wings lately into a couple different other things that mean a lot to me. I've been working with a lot with people going through divorce, just because that's something that is near and dear to me. But my investors are my heart. That's where I started, and I have super special relationships with a lot of those realtors and clients to this day. So I absolutely love seeing people go through that process of building a portfolio and helping them get there.
And are you selling directly to Fannie, even with the new firm?
Not anymore. Nope. Now I'm a broker. So now I am actually not working directly with Fannie, but I am working with numerous different investors, which allows us a little more flexibility. In fact, everybody decided during COVID to quit their jobs. So I get more calls now than ever. The old I want to be a real estate agent, but I don't, or a real estate investor, but I don't have a job, that Sean and I used to joke about. Well, now there's programs for those people. It's called a DSCR loan. So by being a broker, I can access those loans, I can access bank statement loans, and I can go direct to the investor. My The overlays on my pricing are so much lower as a broker, because if you think about when I was working for a lender, I think by the time I left that employer, they had close to 1,000 employees. There's a lot of layers of management. There's a lot of layers in there that are getting paid out of have to get paid out of my paycheck. Well, I only have myself and 4 employees. So we run lean and mean. We all office out of our homes. So we're able to really keep our pricing aggressive and help our clients access many different programs.
Oh, that's interesting. But you still have direct to Fannie guidelines, right? So and here's where I'm
We
going.
sure do. Yeah.
A lot of lenders have, you said a pricing overlay, but a lot of lenders have guideline overlays, right?
Yes.
So they're just making it a little bit more strict, a little bit harder to get the loan. And look, they go at real estate investors, right? People perceive real estate investors as risky because if you're going to default on something, you'll default on your rental property before your own home where your family is, right? So that's why it's considered riskier. But if you have direct to Fannie access, then there's no overlays, right?
Yeah, that was one of the things that we vetted out when we decided to become a broker was we wanted to make sure we had at least a handful of investors that had no overlays to those guidelines that would affect our real estate investors. And we were really happy to find some great ones with great pricing.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
I know some of the overlays is the number of properties, right? So the
Yeah.
Fannie guideline, I believe, is 10, and there's some restrictions in there. Some people will say maximum is 4 because
Mhm.
that's the threshold when the guidelines get stricter. But it's not 4; it's 10, and it's
It
only
is.
it's only 10 if you're buying an investment property, right? I could buy an 11th if it's my primary home.
You can.
Um, but here's my question to you: you said earlier in this interview one of our mutual clients did like 17 of these BRRRR strategies. So how is that possible?
Because it was a husband and wife team. So we bounced between them and actually we've had 2 now. I think another couple got pretty darn close to that number before they moved off to Costa Rica. Good for them. Um, that's what you do when you acquire 17 rental properties. So we would bounce between them, and sometimes we would have to get really creative. In fact, the most recent one that we helped acquire that many, they were both employed when we met them, and their goal was to get to retirement. Well, so we were strategic in that we piled the first several into the husband's name so that when he retired, we would be able to show all of this income under his name and can allow him to continue to qualify. Then from there, we put them under his wife's name so that she could retire and do the same thing. So it was really strategy from property number one, all sure we were staying on task and ahead of them to help support their retirement plans. And now they are fully retired.
So, Kim, this is a perfect point you're making. You got to plan ahead with this strategy, right? One of our guidelines is you got to work with you or someone that understands this process to make sure you're qualified, because we don't want to put you into a loan you can't get out of.
Right.
Right. So that's a little bit of ahead planning. You're taking it a step further, even because you're building a whole strategy. You built an entire strategy around this couple. So when is the right time to start this planning and call you? And if I was an investor and I want to do this, when's the best time to call you?
Before you quit your job.
And don't go out and buy a car the
DSCR
day
loan,
before
but
closing.
yeah. You know, our best financing, like you said earlier, is always going to be a conventional loan. Um, Rates are high right now across the board, but the terms are never as favorable as a conventional loan. So to qualify for that, we typically need to show that you have income, and a lot of the time that comes from a W-2 position. So if this is your goal at any time in the future, let's talk about it now.
Right.
Sometimes people are closer than they think to investing. Sometimes there are some different strategies they can take now. For example, and I think you and I have talked about this, I have a lot of younger generation people house hacking right now, right? Let's get you into a few properties as a first time home buyer with 5% down. Build up some equity, build up some cash reserves so that when you don't want to move anymore, you are able to start investing in property as a true investor, as opposed to moving every couple of years to try to use this owner occupied financing. So it can start, I'm starting my daughter before she goes to college. We're going to figure it out and have a plan. And my son's 12, and he told me this summer that when he gets out of school, he's going to have passive income for a duplex. And I was like,
Yes, that's awesome. I
oh,
love
you've been
that.
listening to.
That's amazing. I'm reading
Yeah.
I'm reading Rich Dad Poor Dad to my 14-year-old daughter right now. And so
Oh,
you could tell she's like, "Oh gosh, I don't want to read tonight, Dad." She's like,
right. Do we have to?
but she's starting to pick up on it, even though she's probably in and out, honestly, listening. But you're starting to see she's picking up on it. And after we're done with this book, she could pick another one. We'll read that one. But
Right.
it's a lot of fun for me just watching her as I'm reading.
Yeah, and their brains, to have their brains start to develop around that in their teenage years, it'll be natural for them. Where we're trying to educate a lot of the time people who've been doing it a certain way for a
Right.
long time.
That's a good point.
So
All right. Well, I want to get into the economy a little bit if you're open to that, and then we're kind of running short on time. So I want to hear more about the interest rates because you brought it up, And then let's just close out with your contact info and all that. So what's going on? Why are interest
Well,
rates so high?
I will tell you what, I am the eternal optimist, and I am still optimistic, but my optimism has waned a bit as we've moved into this year. You know, it's so interesting to me because the consumer numbers aren't dropping, the employment numbers aren't dropping. Yet here we have the highest credit card debt that we've had in decades, right? Which is reminiscent to me of, gosh, early 2000s. And, all of these indicators pointing towards something has to change. But why isn't it changing? It's mind-boggling to me. And I am no economist. I will say that because I also firmly believe that I can only control the things I can control. So I'm going to keep working on my job and we'll let the interest rates figure themselves out. But it's also funny to me that if you actually are looking at numbers, and I'll talk to a client and I'll say, okay, let's say you want to buy this house and the rate's 7.5, and in a year the rates drop to 6.5. Well, that payment isn't that big of a difference, and they're shocked sometimes. So what are we waiting for, right?
Yeah.
We're waiting for rates to drop so you can save $100 or $200 a month. Well, I'll guarantee you when those rates do drop and the demand increases even more than it already has, you're going to be paying more for a house than that's going to just offset the difference anyways. So in my opinion, my humble opinion, I don't think investing should ever be done based on the market, based on the rates. What is the asset? Is it a valuable asset? Where do you want that asset to be in 30 years? That was a huge lesson I learned when I bought that townhome in Chicago. I didn't buy it with the intention to hold on to it for 30 years. If I still owned that townhouse that I sold for $140,000 less than I owed on it, now I looked it up the other day, it's worth over 6, right? Had I had that mindset and prepared financially and mentally for that, I would have waited out that storm. So when I talk to my customers, and a lot of the time, one of the things they'll say is, "What if there's a bubble and all of these prices can't sustain themselves? What if the values drop? Who cares? Are you selling it in 2 years? Then who cares? Because we've seen the analytics. Appreciation always is going up. So if there's little bumps and valleys all along the way, that's the way the market works. But if your intention is to truly invest, long-term invest, there's no reason not to do it now. So forget about the rates, forget about all the stuff, and just look for a really solid asset to invest in.
Yeah, I get that too. Like, what if there's a crash? First of all, I can't see it. I did write a report about this and why I feel so strongly about this. But so thepinereport.com, check out why I don't think there's going to be a housing crash. But listen, when I get the same feedback you just got, Kim, I say, well, weren't we waiting for a crash in 2020? I mean, we were primed for a crash before COVID, and then COVID, if anything, would have pushed us over, right?
Mm-hmm.
And now I understand it was influenced by the government, but we didn't hit the crash. And in fact, the real estate appreciation has been off the charts since then.
Mm-hmm.
So had you bought instead of waiting for the crash, where would you be today?
Right. Right. And you would have had a 4% or 2% or 3%.
Right. And I hate it, but it's true. You marry the property, you date the rate, right? We hear that all the time. So I agree with you. You can always refinance if rates do go down like we all expect. Look, they have to go down.
Yeah. And if they don't, now you still have the lowest rate because there's
That's right. All markets breathe. They go up, they go down, they go up, they go down. The values typically go up more than down. I agree with that too. But you do that. You see the breadth, the up, the down. Real estate or interest rates are no different. They have to go up. They have to come down. They have to go. So we know that they're going to come down. We just don't know when.
Right.
Anything else on the economy or interest rates or
right? So we'll see what happens. Usually rates just are responding to that and come down as we get closer to the election. We'll see.
Yeah, the market's built in. 6 rate cuts right at the beginning of the year. Now they're around 2?
Around 2, I think.
Maybe 3, because I think that they're still expecting, or the Fed has said, we still want 75 basis points. So that would indicate 3 cuts, but I don't think the market's got that built in yet. Right? I think it's more like 2-ish cuts now. So I don't know. I agree. I don't think we should be waiting. Any final pieces of advice? Anything you could help us be better real estate investors, Kim?
Oh gosh. I would say get into the community. There's so many awesome groups here. I can connect you with 2 or 3 groups I can think of off the top of my head that are amazing resources, people that want to help, people that support each other as they're working on different projects. It's a really incredible community that we have here in the Twin Cities for real estate investors and beyond. There's groups in Duluth, there's groups in Rochester. I just think that people feel like they need to be competitive and if they need to find the property before everyone else does, it just doesn't work that way. Everybody has different needs. Everybody's looking for different things. The more people you can connect with, the better. And then you have the resources you need too, right? Yeah. Had I not gone to the MNREA meeting, I never would have met Sean. I never would have even known about your resource that I could share with so many of my clients that have had success using it. We've got CPAs that specialize in working with real estate investors, right? That's a whole different animal than your typical CPA. So such a valuable opportunity to network here in the Twin Cities. So I'd say for people to make sure that they're looking into that and finding people they can participate with. And I think you probably say it every single podcast, right? Don't wait.
Don't wait. That's
I've
right.
never heard somebody say, I wish I would have waited to buy that property 2 more years. Yep. Right? They're always happy that they did it. So
yeah, and if prices do crash, great, buy more.
Buy more. Yeah.
Yeah.
And have a long-term strategy in mind.
Yeah. So we definitely want to network, whether you're in the Twin Cities or not. But if you are in the Twin Cities, we want to network with you. So how do we do that?
Well, I am out and about at different investing stuff. So if you find my Facebook page, which if you can throw the link out there, that would be.
I'll put it in the notes. Yep.
Anytime I'm going to be speaking at an event, I will pop something on there. And again, my email, kim@kptmortgage.com. If you're looking for more information on networking events or groups that you'd like to join, if you have questions about investing, if you need to be connected with a great realtor, great CPA, all of those things.
And call you early. Don't wait until you have a deal under contract. It's much better to get your money lined up prior to. I hear this a lot, Kim. I'm just thinking okay, find a deal and the money's going to come. Right? We hear this. No. That is not true, y'all. That is not true. Now, if you find a great deal, is it possible to get out of it and profit without having the money lined up? Yes, of course it is. But it's much better, much, much better to line up some funding prior to. It just gives you comfort and you won't have to wholesale it. You'll be able to take it down yourself or BRRRR strategy or whatever. So get with Kim. The Facebook, I have it right here. I am going to put it in the show notes, but it's right here. It's just facebook.com/KPT mortgage. And Kim's email, kim@kptmortgage.com. Kim, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you. I always love to see you. It's fun to finally get a chance to spend a little time with you. So
yeah, and you know what? You missed our Success Summit. Where were you?
I was at volleyball. My life is ruled by volleyball.
I'll tell you.
This is our last year, so it's been a lot of fun.
It was not the same without you. I will say that.
Well, I did miss it. It actually is one of my favorite events because I get to see all these people that I've known now for over 10 years.
Yeah,
so
it's fun.
I sent Louise in. She likes to give Sean a little hard time. So they had fun.
Yeah, well, we had another great event. It would have been better with you there. So next year we'll see you. So we do that in the spring at mniss.com. So listener, thank you so much for tuning in. Again, help us out. 5-star review. You don't have any idea how much that helps the podcast so we can reach more real estate investors, more real estate educators just like you. And again, Kim, thank you so much for your time. Have a fantastic day. Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I did. If you did, please be sure to follow and leave us a review. Oh yeah, and tell a friend.